Just a Jewel with our host, Arthur Malik.
Welcome to Just a Jewel. I'm your host, Arthur Malik. Today we have a very, very special guest. And I'm going to let her introduce herself to you. This is how special she is. I don't even want to mention her name. I want her to give it to you herself. Introduce yourself to my guest, please.
Hey, everybody. My name is the Reverend Doris K. Dalton. I am the Executive Director of the Martin Luther King Institute for Nonviolence here in Westchester County. I'm also the Chair of the Westchester County Human Rights Commission. It's great to see everybody.
So, human rights, to me itself, says something about activism. Are you also an activist?
Yeah, I would call myself a community activist. Yeah, I would say that.
What type of activist? What do you do? What are you fighting against, or who are you fighting for?
I think I'm fighting for, I wouldn't call myself fighting for. Maybe I'm inviting people to help us build a stronger community where everyone can feel safe and everyone can feel that they have dignity and a safe place to live.
What is the nucleus in building that particular safe haven, so to speak? What is the actual nucleus for that?
I'm going to talk a little bit philosophically, if that's okay with you.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, okay. So I think the nucleus of building a strong community is that everybody wants to be able to live in safety. And we also want to be able to see each other as people who all deserve dignity. And I really strongly agree with what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, that I cannot fully be who I am unless you are fully who you are. So when I think about what strong communities are, it really is that we advocate for each other. And even though I may have reached where I want to be, I really can't enjoy what I've succeeded in until I see that you have also enjoyed what you succeed in. Because what I also see is that communities are as strong as the individuals are that are in it. And we can't fully be a strong community if there are people in our community that are suffering, that don't have full justice, that don't have full access to opportunity, education, employment with dignity. Those are things that I think we need in order to have a strong community where everyone can be fully who they are meant to be.
But outside of dignity, what are some of the components that can rebuild that infrastructure of community?
Oh, geez. That's a really good question. I think outside of dignity, which is an inherent right for every person who is born on this earth, outside of dignity, I think we all need to be treated with respect, have access to their full rights, civil rights, human rights, and to be treated fairly in a system of justice that is equitable for all people.
Right.
And maybe the word equity is what we really need to think about. What does it mean that we all have that this framework that we live in, that the system that we live in is equitable for all persons?
It's beautiful. Before we got on camera, you mentioned a word, and it's a beautiful word, and I think this is one of the missing components also. You mentioned compassion.
Yeah.
What is compassion to you?
Oh, these are such good questions. I think compassion to me is being able to see another person and having an understanding of what that person is going through. I think very often we live our lives thinking about what we need. I need to feed myself. I need to take care of myself. I need to make sure that I'm earning my money, but not also thinking about how we're connected. Compassion is about how we are connected, that we are more than just living on our own island, right? That I can look at you and think, oh gosh, I wonder what Malik is going through. I wonder what these struggles that he has, how that's impacted him, and how that has helped him to give him a new drive, and how I can be sensitive towards that, think about that, and help him through that. So it's more. So here's another example. I was having a conversation today with some friends of mine. We were talking about how very often in this world of justice,
Right.
that we don't always get the justice that we want. right? For example, if
You
you
say
have
in this world of justice?
in this world of where we're thinking about law enforcement,
Right.
mass incarceration, and in the areas of justice, that we don't always get the justice that we want. And I always think about, well, okay, so what's going on in the other person's mind? Sometimes the beginning of an encounter that you have a lot with a law enforcement officer is just a badly placed word, or I feel more offended than the officer was meaning to. The officer makes a statement, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is awful. This person thinks really poorly of me, and then all of a sudden, instead of being at a 1, I'm at a 10, and I speak really harshly. And then the officer all of a sudden is treating you with complete disrespect, right? All of a sudden you're cuffed, you're being charged, you're being pulled away. And then I think, oh, gosh, what's going on in this interaction? This is difficult to say. And maybe it's difficult for some people to hear. But law enforcement officers, I mean, they don't always get it right. But I often think about how they feel like they're a victim, that they're a target. There are instances where officers do feel like they have been targeted, they have been killed in the line of duty, so they feel that they're in danger. How can I have compassion for somebody who feels that they're often in danger when they're at their job?
I agree.
Yeah. It's a difficult conversation.
And I disagree, but because you have some now that's, from a racist aspect, they're racist, so they go into the field looking maybe for a colored or Hispanic to disturb.
Yeah.
So those officers lack compassion.
Right.
And I did some study on the word compassion, and the root word is compassion, which means to suffer with.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And it's to put yourself in someone else's shoes and walk into their plight.
Yes.
And when you walk into their plight, you have to walk into this word called understanding, as you described.
That's right.
So it's imperative that we have understanding for one's plight.
Yes.
And if you don't do that, you can never disseminate compassion towards that someone. So, and I do agree, though, if this officer, he's using decorum, he's being respectful, and sometimes we allow people to make us feel inferior, and we accept it, and then we portray that inferiority on others.
Yeah.
So I think we shouldn't allow no one to make us feel inferior, and then I think the dialogue will go a little more smoother.
Let's get deeper. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
I would love to lay something else down. I think that often we're caught up in corrupted systems that have taught us from a very young age about what to fear and what not to fear. Racism is part of a system, right? And if you grow up thinking that this category of people are a certain way, and that I should fear them, and then whatever job you are in, whether it's law enforcement, human resources officer, educator, banker, whatever, then you carry that construct with you wherever you go, right? And then the system continues to encourage that. The system continues to support that, and never holds that incorrect construct accountable. So there's one part of me that's like, okay, everybody needs to be held accountable to what is actually right, what is actually just, what's actually equitable. But at the same time, I'm like, wow, I hate to set people up to fail. Like if, for example, if I'm a supervisor and I say to a person who just arrived on the job, okay, I need you to do A, B, C, and D, but I don't ever teach them how to do it the right way. And then I come back to them, it's like, you didn't do these things right. You fail. I'm firing you. But never really gave them the opportunity to give them all the tools to succeed, right? So going back, we know that this world that we live in, it's filled with injustices. It's filled with a corrupt construct and systems. So if I always like just pound down on you because you always mess up, because you can't get it right, because these relationships are always going to be ruined a little bit from the word go, because we've been taught incorrectly, then we've set each other up to fail. And I think that's where I also think about compassion, because I see that we're in a system where we are automatically set up to fail. Like our relationships are always going to be distorted in a way because we have been taught incorrectly from very young age. How can I help us correct this? How can we get on the right page? How can we go back to the beginning and fix it so that when I encounter you, I can really support you to be fully who you should be without all this other construct, this crazy, unjust system that we live under. I think that's part of the problem, the very deep core problem that we live in.
I agree. And to me, one of the solutions on a way to eradicate such behavior is that we have to come to the realization that no one had a say-so in the color of their skin.
Right.
No one.
Exactly.
However, we look down upon someone because they may have a different skin color or a different ethnicity, right? But we should understand that it's the character that controls the behavior.
Yeah.
So you should be mad at me if my character is in disarray and I'm disrespectful and I'm vulgar.
Yeah.
You could be mad at me for that because I have say-so, I have control over that.
Yeah.
But you should never be mad at someone because of the skin color that they have.
Right.
Because we don't have control over
Or
it.
where you were born.
Right, we don't have no control over that.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So we should like or dislike each other predicated on character and not our skin tone.
I agree fully, and that's probably that's what keeps us. And when I say us, I don't mean Doris and Malik, but I mean just us in general, like people. That's what keeps us so far apart because we can't find a way to get across differences.
Right.
And being able to find a way across differences and being able to see, oh wow, instead of running away from you because you're different or running away from somebody who's different, let me see if I can get close to you and find out what are the wonderful parts about you, what are the wonderful things about you that make you a full human, like what's in your character. What are you aspiring to do? What are the positive things that you want to contribute to community instead of saying, oh my gosh, this person is from a certain state or a city and I don't like those people, so I'm not going to talk to them. That's kind of ridiculous.
See, but I'm going back to what you said earlier, which was a very valid point, is that we were taught these particular differences.
That's right.
Because right now, if you put a Chinese person behind a curtain and they cry, you put a Puerto Rican behind a curtain and they cry, you put an Afro-American behind a curtain and they cry, you can't distinguish their ethnicities based on that cry.
That's right.
You see, so we are taught, again, to run from particular differences that we can see physically. But once we come closer, we see how much the same we actually are.
Right.
There's not much difference.
That's right.
So.
That's right. I totally agree. So, I'm sorry. Do you have a question for me?
Okay.
Okay. I have another thought. I really think that since we know this truth, and we're not the only ones who hold this, right? There are a lot of people who maybe they haven't fully ingested this or digested this truth, right? But they know parts of it. I think then there's something that we need to talk about, that we as a society need to talk about, like what is real accountability? And very often we think of accountability as punishment, as a negative consequence.
Right.
Like when we use the phrase, I need to hold you accountable, it's like, oh my gosh, here I go, I'm gonna get fired, I'm about to get demoted, I'm about to get an F. But what if we said, I'm about to hold you accountable because I love you, because that I want you to do better, I want you to be your best self. Accountability from a point of view of like saying, I just want you to be the best of who you can be. I think that changes the conversation. And it also asks us as a people, as a community, to do better.
I concur, because accountability is just it's synonymous with responsibility.
Yeah.
Right. So you want me to be accountability for the individual the God-given gifts that I obtain, who I am as a person, who I am as a human being. Yeah. And if we are all accountable or responsible for that demeanor, then it wouldn't be as much chaos in society that exists. So I agree with that 100%. But I need to ask you a question, because you are a special person, and seriously, because I got some information on you based on the Kenny Chamberlain case.
Yeah.
You know, Kenny Chamberlain, I think his father was murdered by police officers in White Plains, New York, a couple of years ago. And
2011.
2011, okay. And when that transpired, there's a whole lot of people that abandoned Kenny Chamberlain Jr., right? Is it Kenny?
Yeah,
They
his father,
abandoned him.
Kenneth Chamberlain
Senior,
Sr.,
and
was
he's the
killed.
junior.
He's the junior.
So they abandoned Kenny Chamberlain Jr. when he was seeking justice.
Yeah.
And you were one of the individuals. I'm talking. There was a lot of religious people, who abandoned him also, and you were one of the ones who stayed by his side. What gave you that courageousness, and you didn't fear the backlash of the city of White Plains or the police officers of White Plains? What instilled that courage in you to remain?
That's a great question. I think it goes back to all the things we've talked about, the desire for accountability through love. And also I really feel strongly that I'm starting to get teary, I think, because this is so important to me. There are not enough people in this world who want to stand up for people who are suffering, who are oppressed. I'm sorry, I'm like teary. But it's really serious to me, and it's close to my heart, and I think that's why I'm getting emotional. Very often, we want to run away from the things that are difficult and the things that make us vulnerable. Kenneth he could have chosen a different path. He could have said, I'm not going to try to fight and get justice. I'm just going to, whatever you give me is fine.
Right.
But because he was the one, he was like, I really need help and doing more and getting, and he's not actually trying to pound down on the White Plains police for the things that they did wrong. He just wants them to do what's right. It's the accountability part. And of course he's upset because there are so many obstacles. Politically, this has been really difficult for him. When I say politically, I mean there are lots of politicians who also shied away from him, where the support has fallen away from him. But we know it's just. We know it's right. Sometimes deep down in your gut, you see a thing and this was not right. Mm-hmm. But people don't always stand up to say, gosh, that wasn't right, because we're afraid to hold people accountable. And accountability should come out of compassion. It should come out of knowing that we can do better, and also knowing that we can't fully be who we should be unless we support everyone to be fully who they should be, right?
Absolutely.
So I also, so I'm crying, which I often do, and and I also cry because I feel deep compassion. I feel deep compassion, not just for Kenneth, but also for, this is going to sound crazy, I feel compassion for those people who feel like I really got to toe the line. I'm in this job and I want to keep my job, and I know what was right, and I don't want to stand and be against my superiors who are trying to say, this is what we're going to do. This is the construct. This is the message we're going to hold. Right. So the people are also caught up in a difficult situation. And I think that's part of the, I hope I'm making sense, but I feel like we're all caught in this crazy web of we just need to keep the veneer on. We just got to be really straight and keep this message, oh, thank you, you're so kind, and keep this message really tight and together. But everyone knows down deep inside, there's a deeper struggle, right? We don't have to, what would happen if we would actually just call out the truth and say, you know what? We don't always have to be so tough. Where is forgiveness? How can I say, hey, Kenneth, we did this wrong. Could you please forgive us? I think if somebody came up to him from the police department and said, let's get this right. Let's really do this right. How would that change the conversation? How would that change the conversation between law enforcement officers and also from the communities that they're trying to protect? How would that change the conversation and saying, wow, we could do this better, instead of saying, we did this, we never did anything wrong. Everything we did was right.
No, I think that would definitely change the dynamics of the situation. But again, when we speak about the word compassion, they can't put themselves in his footsteps. Until they're able to do so, they would never apologize. Why?
Well, and honestly, we're saying all of this, and I have to acknowledge that there, it's been through several It's been through court. It's currently in the appeals process. So in terms of like the law, they're following the law. And also I understand that there's a liability issue. They can't like publicly, they don't feel like they can publicly say, we're sorry, we did this wrong, because they don't want to be, you're right, they don't want to be sued. But I wonder if there is a way, and if there's a day where we could just drop all of the fear and the mistrust of each other and say, let's just be real humans for a second. And let's be honest that your suffering is caught up in my suffering. And as long as you're suffering, I will suffer. And we need more people who'd be willing to stand up and say that. I think we need more people who'd be willing to be courageous to say, let's be real humans. We're all suffering. And I think it's not so much, I would never call it courageous on my part. I would just call it being real, being human.
And whether you call it courageous or not, I will stick with that word, because in today's society.
And being courageous enough to cry on camera.
See, that's courageous. But being real in today's society is courageous, because there's so many fakes. So that's a courageous act. To even be real in today's society is a courageous act.
Yeah, I guess it's true. We're all like wanting to be so clean. We want to look good. We want to smell good. We want to drive the right car. We want to do all these things right. Okay, I know we've got like 5 minutes, but let me just say a couple more things.
Speak, talk.
I really think that we, in this society, I think that we are so pushed to try to follow some kind of template of what is right, and what is trying to fulfill some kind of imaginary. Can I just say things that are not popular? There is a template of white supremacy that we're all trying to be shoved into and trying to conform to. You got to be this kind of wealthy. You got to drive this kind of car. You have to be able to. Your reputation needs to be like this. Your behavior needs to be like this. Life is messy. We don't have time to be shoved into templates. And if we're real, I don't need to be shoved in or conform into some kind of template of what is good, what is appropriate, what is right. I would rather us just be real with each other, because that's where the love can really bloom.
But it's sad today we are not taught to be ourselves. We are stripped from that. We are taught to be someone else.
Right.
And as far as this is important for people to understand in this society, is that because most of us think that the victim, just the victim, is something wrong with just the victim. But the victimizer, there's something wrong with the victimizer also. Because for me to snatch someone's old lady purse, or me to rape an old lady, it's something wrong with me. Not just it's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
You see, so there's some compassion that's needed for the victimizer as well as the victim. And a lot of times we don't see that. We just say, oh, look at the animal. That's an animal. And pertaining to these police officers too. The police officer that committed this particular act needs some intervention.
Right.
No? And we ignore that because a life was taken.
Right.
You see, and this is where compassion comes in. We have to put ourselves in that particular officer's footsteps also.
Right.
Although I disagree with the act that was committed, but I understand today the word compassion, and there's intervention needed for both parties.
Right. And honestly, all of this comes down to choice. Like I can make a choice to be a better person, or I can make a choice to just go along. I can make a choice to go along with the system that's presented to me, with the message that's presented to me. I can choose to believe everything that's in the media and all the commercials and say, oh, I need my hair to look like this. I need my skin to look like this. I need my car to look like this. I need to also believe everything my supervisor says, and I need to go along with that. Or I need to, acquire some kind of wealth in order to be acceptable. I can choose to believe those things, or I can choose not to. And the choice not to conform to these paradigms that continue to destroy us and our society, and to break us apart from our true self, that's a choice that we have to make.
I agree with that. Separatism, that's currency. It's very lucrative in this world.
Yeah.
To separate is money, because to separate is what? War.
Yeah.
Right? And you capitalize off of war. So if I dislike you because of who you are, that's separatism.
Yeah.
If I dislike you because you can afford Jordans and I can't, That's separatism, because we think that material gain actually makes us, and it's
Yeah.
actually stripping us from who we are intended to be in life.
Yeah.
So I definitely, I agree, and it's beautiful that you're not just an orator of your ideology, you're a practitioner of it. And this is why I brought up the Kenny Chamberlain thing, because you're sitting here, you're talking, you're orating it, but you're actually a practitioner because you were there, you were on the sideline, you were on the battlefield, and you didn't run from it.
No.
So you're a practitioner of your speech, and that's beautiful.
Thanks. And I'm gonna wipe my eyes again.
You can wipe your eyes again. Yeah. But now, so what will you suggest that we use to eradicate such dirty thoughts that lies in society?
Gosh, this is such a deep question. Eradicate. There's a lot I think we need to do. I think we need to get educated. And I don't mean just go to school. I mean that we need to dig deeper. And I know this is, everything I'm saying is not popular. It's not mainstream. But I believe this truly. We so often believe what we are taught, and we don't question it. We don't think about critically how what we're taught, what is if we take what we're taught and the education that we have and we pull it all the way down to the final conclusion, we don't ever critically think and analyze what that really means for me and how I want to live my life and the things that I want to choose to be and to do in this world. So I think education is key. It's not just accepting exactly what I'm fed, but also going out and looking deeper. I think that we often really take for granted that everything that we receive in this world is also just, oh, I earned it, right? I earned all of this. But there's a level of privilege that all of us also obtain. And I say this also, people of color in this country, there's a level of privilege that we have that people in other countries of the world don't have, right? So we often take some of this for granted, and we often also listen very carefully and believe the messages that are taught to us. This victimizer stance that we take. Like I believe if I'm a Republican, I'm going to believe everything that they say about Democrats.
Absolutely.
What? Come on, that's not true. I mean, people have different thoughts. I can think differently than all these categories. I'm not a stereotype. I don't think in categories. I don't think in prescribed thoughts, right? And none of us do unless we choose to. And so I think education and choosing to think, critically and analytically is something that we can do for ourselves.
Okay. We're running out of time, but
I know.
One of the greatest words, you just used a great word in education. And education comes from the root word educare, which means to bring out.
Yeah.
So that means it's already in us.
Right.
So we are educated. And,
Right.
and this is sometimes why I love teachers, because it's up to teachers sometimes to extract that education.
That's right.
However, we must bear in mind that it resides within us.
Right.
So we should understand that we should be who we are and not be afraid of who we are, and don't be made up from external because it's already internal. I definitely appreciate having you on my show. You're great. Maybe we should do a part 2 and have you back on.
Yeah, one where I'm not crying.
Okay, whether you're crying or not, because that's even, it's real. Like you just said, it's real, and a lot of people are afraid to be real. So I definitely appreciate having you on, and I'm going to have you back on. We're going to do a part 2 because to me it was very interesting.
Yeah.
So this is Just a Jew with Arthur Malik. Listen, you have to never be afraid to be who you are, because you'll be so comfortable with being someone else. Just a Jew. Peace.
Just a Jewel with our host, Arthur Malik.